there's another way to calculate the midpoint between 2 points, and that is by using what I call the midpoint shortcut. Now, if you've watched the videos for distance, you saw that we use the traditional distance formula to figure out the distance between 2 points, and then I showed you a shortcut method, which basically does the same thing. It just organizes the work a little bit easier. I think it's less likely you'll make errors with the shortcut method, but it's up to you whether you want to use it. And it's the same with the midpoint formula. We have a midpoint shortcut we can also use to figure out the midpoint between 2 points. So this section is found in section number 2 of your flipbook for Intro to IM2. Section number 2, the top flap, the right-hand side, right next to the midpoint formula section. And we titled this one as Midpoint Shortcut. Midpoint Shortcut. Okay, the first thing you do to use this particular method of finding the midpoint is to take the 2 points that you're given and write them down one on top of the other. We did the same thing for the distance shortcut, only there's going to be one big difference here, and I'm going to explain it to you in a moment. So just like with the distance formula, it doesn't matter whether you put the B value on top and the A value on bottom, or the A value on top and the B value on bottom. You can put these two coordinates in any order you want. Doesn't matter which one's on top or which one's on bottom. It's going to work out the same. Okay, let's go through the steps, and then I'll show you mathematically how to do that. So step number 1, you're going to add the coordinate values together. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to add them together. Step number 2, divide the 2 new values that you get by 2. Divide the new values by 2. Third step, add brackets and a comma, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a moment. That's step number 3. And step number 4, simplify if needed. If you've ended up with fractions that are whole numbers and you want to simplify those, you can simplify your final answer. Okay, so let's step through this process. First thing it says is add the coordinate values together. I want to put a plus sign right here so you see we are adding them now. Here's where you got to be careful. The distance shortcut tells you to subtract the bottom values from the top value. You subtract them. In the midpoint shortcut, we add them. The reason why is, take a look at the midpoint formula. In the midpoint formula, we are adding the 2 x values together. We're adding the 2 y values together. Remember, if you can, in the distance formula, we actually subtract the 2 x values and subtract the y values. That's why we subtract when we're using the distance shortcut, but we're going to add when we're using the midpoint shortcut. So, that being said, 12 plus 16 is 28, and negative 3 plus 7 is 4. Now, some of you have difficulty with negative numbers. This is where you use your calculator. Put in negative 3 plus 7. It'll do the work for you and give you 4. There's step number 1. Step number 2, divide the new values by 2. So all you do is take 28 divided by 2 in your calculator. That's going to be 14. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. That's step number 2. Step number 3, add brackets and a comma. All you're doing is this, comma, brackets. And by the way, if you see, this is actually now your midpoint. Take a look at the midpoint formula. We ended up with 14, comma 2. So we used the same points, got the exact same answer. So our final answer for our midpoint here is 14, comma 2, and that is how we use the midpoint shortcut.